you hear the term, stand your ground, what comes to mind? Most likely a fight or an argument or a confrontation or a challenge. These words readily come to mind. Hello and welcome to Evolve with Jola. I am Jola. On today's episode, we are going to examine what it means to stand your ground and the need for it. As you make this journey through life, you're going to encounter obstacles, challenges that have the tendencies to sweep you off course. So if you don't stand your ground, you're going to be swept out completely. Remember that standing your ground has a lot to do with laying the right foundation, a strong, deep-rooted foundation. This foundation laid determines what kind of structure can be built and how high this structure or building can go. And this is why it's important, very, very important to have this discussion today. Joining me is my beautiful guest, Eguonu Agofure, a trained and certified business economist and clarity consultant. She's also a lead strategist at Thrive Centered Entrepreneurial Finishing School, where they help entrepreneurs and business owners take their business or ideas from where it is to where they want to be.
Hello, Eguonu. How are you doing?
Fine. Thank you so much, Jola.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you. So I know you're itchy right now to start this discussion. Our topic for today is one that is very, very close to your heart. So I'm just going to ask you to begin by telling us a little about what standing your ground really is.
Okay, thank you so much once again. Let me say thank you for having me on the show. Thank you so much. I love what you were doing. Like, that is amazing. Thank you. Right? Okay, so what does it mean to stand your ground? Now, before I go into the definition, let me just lay it out there that there's a US law that says stand your ground. So for those who do not know, so apart from that law, in the context of man, the phrase stand your ground, what does it mean? So stand your ground basically is you refusing to back down on a particular stance or maybe a line of action that you have chosen to take. Yes. And so it's just saying, you know what, I do not care what you say. I don't care what you think right now, but what I have decided I'm going to do, I am going to do. Yes.
I never actually saw it from this perspective. You've literally broadened my view about this particular topic. I would like you to give me a scenario, a situation where like one is required to stand their ground.
Okay, thank you so much for this question. Like, this is really, really important because like I always say, like, I think it's even a popular adage in our society that if you fail to stand for something, you will fall for anything, right? And so what scenarios, does the person need to stand their ground? So I'll give you some examples. Number one is your value, right? Everybody should have a value system. Like, seriously, what do you stand for? How can we define who you are? So everybody should have a value system, a moral, ethics that this is, when it comes to me, I wouldn't budge on this, I wouldn't budge on that, right? And then secondly, another one is your vision. Maybe you have this destination in mind, you know where you're going. And so if you know where you're going as a person and I come and tell you something else, you should know that, this is not going to work because it is not in line with where I am going to, right? And another example is when you have a superior information about something. Take, for instance, a doctor, right? And then you know that if you do this, the patient could die. And so what are you supposed to do? You stand your ground on that issue because you know you have superior information about the matter. Another example could be principles. So unless there's a higher principle that you could superimpose, then you should stand your ground. Yeah.
Most people out there are probably thinking, why do I have to stand my ground? Like, what difference does it really make? Please, what do you have to say to them?
Okay, so if you are thinking that why do I have to stand my ground? Most especially if you're young and, as young people, it's very easy to impress things on them, mostly because we are in this age of digital economy whereby anything goes, anything can become viral. Yeah. And so why should you stand your ground? Now, like I said earlier, let me repeat what I said earlier, that if you fail to stand for something, you will fall for anything. That is a given, right? And so I will answer this question from two different angles. First, from the angle of a person who is asking herself or himself, why should I stand my ground? Now, if you don't stand your ground, you're going to basically be what? This inconsistent person who doesn't know where exactly she's going to in life. It also means that you're also training your mind to be begin to, because man is a sum total of his thoughts. And so if by nature, what you do, your character, you don't stand your ground, you don't stick to particular course, any little thing comes, you're changing your mind, this is a trend, and then, oh, okay, next. What happens is you're training your mind, you're training yourself to become that human that cannot follow a particular course of action to the end. And so it now becomes an identity issue. Who are you? Who do we say that you are? And when you look at it from the angle of other people who know you, they can't really say you are this person. They can't really say, okay, this person will stand for this. It means that you can't even honor your word as a person. And so why should I trust you? So it damages a reputation, for instance. And so if you're a young person watching this, believe you me, when it comes to standing your ground, you don't want to budge. A lot of the times you want to know what you stand for and stay on it. Yes.
Indeed, it is very, very important to stand your ground. So now, there's a very huge difference between standing your ground, being rebellious and stubborn. Most of us mix it up. Please, just brief us on that.
Okay, yeah. This question is, yeah. So yes, standing your ground, like I explained earlier, is refusing to back down on a particular line of action or a stance, right? But then when it comes to being rebellious, it's basically you trying to challenge authority, want to oppose the authority in front of you. So let me use an example with a parent, like with parenting, for instance. And maybe your mom is telling you, the mom is telling the child that, you know what, you can't do this because it's not for your benefit. And you're like, I don't care, I'm going to do whatever. That is rebellion. Because there really is no reason why you should not obey them. So there's no reason why, what ground are you standing on? Because whatever they told you to do at that point in time, let's assume is the right thing to do for you, right? And so at that point, what is happening is you're being rebellious. And so there are two different things. When you stand your ground, you have a proven reason to do so. Basically.
That's right. With all you've said now, can you tell us how one can stand their ground and stick to what they've told themselves or told people they're going to do? You know, how to be consistent.
Yeah. Okay, so the phrase is what? Stand your ground. So first things first, there is a ground that you need to set.
Yes.
Right? That you're going to stand on. And so the ground could be your, like I mentioned earlier, your value system. Who you say you are, you know, your identity, what people will know you for, your reputation, right? And so the first thing is ask yourself, who am I? What do I stand for? Am I that person that a new trend comes and then I go with it? Let me give you an example. Let me say, for instance, you work in an organization and then you work in maybe the supply chain. This is even the perfect example because supply chain are the ones who are procurement. They're the ones who are in charge of procuring items for the organization most of the time. And then you work in procurement, right? And then there's this, please help me, I want my company to get it, or I want this to happen. I'm going to give you so amount of money, you know, bribery in quotes. But then you know that as a person who you are someone that doesn't stand for such thing because you've told yourself that my career is going to be one that is, you know, distinguished. I'll be known for that person who I don't falter on my value system. And so what it means is you now say, because you know this is who you are, you will not compromise. And so first ask yourself, what is my value system? Who am I as a person? Who will people say, point me and say, this is who she is, right? And then secondly, you now begin to ask yourself, in what areas of my life is it important that I enforce these standards, right? Let me give you an example. Like I mentioned career with the example, right? Let me say parenting, for instance. You're raising your kids and you have an idea of the kind of kids you want to raise. And so you want to know, okay, fine, when it comes to my children, I want to raise kids that are sound in certain areas, sound in certain moral standards. So it means that there's certain things that you're not going to allow them to have, or certain things you don't allow them to have access to as children. And so you want to know what is my value system? And then secondly, what areas of my life does it pertain to? So you know exactly where you want to enforce those values. And then one more thing, I always encourage, it's good for everybody to have this, you know, moral code that is written out, not just in your mind. You know, when you write something down, it does something to you, clearly written out. It's there. And so you know this, if possible, as a family, like I'm a mom, right? And so I'm a mom, I have 2 kids, right? And so if you have this moral code, you know that when this happens, this is what's going to guide us. Like I told my little boy is 4 years old. He has this habit of, you know, as the last born. Let me not say for now, the last born as far as I'm concerned, right? He has this habit of, you know, throwing tantrums and all of that. And I tell him, we say 3 of us, me, my daughter, and he will go, if you throw tantrums, you're going to stand in a certain place. And so that's what it is. It's clear. And so when you throw tantrum, mommy is not going to budge. She's going to stand her ground. You're going to stand in that place for as long as we have agreed before you threw that tantrum. So you knew what was coming for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that is interesting. Very, very interesting. As humans, we should all have boundaries. So what are these boundaries? And then how can we stand our ground yet still be nice?
Okay, so how can you stand your ground yet still be nice? That can be difficult. I'm not going to lie, it can be very difficult because sometimes people will not understand, right? But then what I would say is you want to do it from a place of love, right? You want to do it from a place of love. Let the person know that, look, I don't have any issues against you. It's not a personal vendetta, right? It's just that I cannot compromise on this thing because I have enough information that tells me that I should go ahead with my decision, right? And then also you want to be from a place of respect for the person or the people or the situation, for instance. And so you want to say, look, guys, I'm going to stand my ground on this issue, right? But I will not belittle anybody because you're standing your ground, then you know what? No. You should come from a place of respect, understanding, law, and then educate whoever is involved that needs to know that this is the way we are going to go with this. Furthermore, let me even share this example with you, right? When it comes to, when you're standing your ground, how to be nice, right? Yeah, so yesterday evening, I had this issue with my son. Not an issue, this situation with my son, right? So he threw a tantrum, he hit his elder sister. You know how the little ones always want to, I'm not weak and all of that. And I told him, now look at what you have done. Now, this is the consequence of the action you took. And he was crying, he was wailing. I felt bad as a mom, normally we will feel bad, but I had to ensure that I went through with that consequence, right? And then after it was done, what did I do? I said, okay, fine. Rona, mommy loves you, right? And he's like, mm-hmm. And so what you did, is it good? He's like, no. And so if you do it next time, oh, mommy, I won't do it. I'm sorry. And so you see, I stood my ground, but at the same time, I ensured that he understood it with respect, with understanding. It's not a case of I didn't belittle him. So this is important, but at the same time, I didn't pass it across as some form of mommy's being wicked.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, are there times where standing your ground is sort of a bad idea?
Yeah, I think they are. As much as we want to stand our ground, I think there are times where it's a bad idea. Like if standing your ground is going to make Nigeria born, sorry, you have to budge. Right?
Yes.
And so sometimes, or if someone is going to die, for instance, like how do you live with that? And so if the sacrifice, is not worth it, then there's no point. And then also I would say, let me say, for instance, there's a superior information. Let me give you this example I like. Let's take, for instance, someone says, I want to make cars fly. I think that plan's already in motion, right? Yeah. So I want to make cars fly. I need cars to begin to fly. And you're like, the government is like, no, cars cannot fly. For what? What will happen? Let me just give an example, a hypothetical example, right? But then there's a higher principle. Even though you say there's gravity, whereby what goes up must come down. But then there's the law of lifts that can be superimposed on gravity. And so when there's a superior information that is proven, then what's the point of standing your ground, right?
Please share with me a personal story or personal experience where you stood your ground and it helped to shaping you, and also when you stood your ground and you somehow sort of felt it wasn't a really good idea.
The first thing is when I stood my ground and basically it worked out for me and it has shaped me as a person. Now, this is like the short version of my life story, right? Because I've always had to stand my ground somehow. Now, let me go back to the beginning. I remember as a child in secondary school, my dad was like, you must be a medical doctor, you must be a pharmacist, you must be in science class. But those are our parents sometimes. Yes. Yeah, but I had to stand my ground. It was difficult because sometimes it's like I'm being disobedient. But I knew that when it comes to science, there's nothing there's no future, right? Like we'll say NFA, they call it no future ambition, anyway, slangs from school way back then, And so I had to. And so I ended up graduating from secondary school as a commercial student who wanted to go to the university to study accounting. Mm-hmm. And so as God would have it, went to university, finished it, and then what happened? My dad had my life planned out. Daddy, I love you. Don't get me wrong. So my dad had my life planned out for me, like you're going to work here, you're going to be here, you're going to do here, you're going to do the masters, all of those things. And so for a while, I actually obedient daughter, followed suit, right? But at some point, I could not, because from a very young age, I understood my why. I knew why I knew what I want to do with my life. I knew the things that speak to my soul from a very, very young age, right? And so those things did not cut it. Restless, angry, unhappy. So at some point, once I got married, took off, started my own thing. Everybody didn't find it funny, but at some point they had to okay, fine. She knows what she wants, let her have it. And so those experiences have taught me to be very resilient as a person. Very resolute. Like, if this is it, once I'm sure, because I'm a faith person, right? So once I'm sure that this is it, then this is it. There's no going back. And so I've become very thick-skinned as a person. And so popular opinion does not coerce me in any way. Yeah. And then the second part of the question, when standing my ground wasn't worth it. Now, this example is going to come from one of my sessions with my client. And so when it comes to my client, I'm a business clarity consultant, by the way. And so when it comes to my clients, I believe that I should be professional in what I do. So the setting boundaries should not be crossed. But then at the beginning of my consulting, I learned something really, really very important, that at the end of the day, people are humans. They are flesh and blood. They have emotions. And so as much as you want to have clear boundaries set because you're doing your job, there are times where you need to allow them express themselves. There are times where the clients will just burst out crying. So because you're professional, you're going to just go, okay. Yeah. At that point, she needs a friend. Maybe one of the things she just learned about herself made her realize, oh wow, my life wasted so many years. And so at that point, she needs a friend. But then early on in my consulting, what I do is, okay, I don't want to pass this boundary. I don't want to cry. I don't even want this. Oh, madam, just try, put yourself together. And it doesn't work that way because they are human beings. They break down. And at that point, they need a friend. You want to just comfort them, like, it's okay. Even if it's 10, 20 minutes. Once you're done, everybody's good. And she will not forget it. Like they say, people remember what you said. Remember how you made them feel. Right? So that's one example of how standing my ground at the beginning of my career as a consultant didn't work out. Yes.
Standing your ground can sometimes be a very good idea, but remember, not in all cases. It might also not be worth it. So, do you have any final words for us?
Yeah, okay, let me share something real quick. As much as it's important to stand your ground, remember that you're dealing with humans, right? And nothing is set in stone. And so sometimes it's important that we go beyond, this is it, and just become empathetic towards others and understand where they are coming from. And so if budging won't cost you much, budge. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Once again, it's very, very nice to have you on the show. Today has been a very inspiring session for me. And I'm standing my ground and insisting that when we ask you to come on the show another time, you're going to come.
Oh, Jola, you have no idea. Of course I would come.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So guys, there you have it. I hope you've learned a lot from our session today. Learn to stand your ground, but when it's necessary. Till I see you next week, I need you to stand your ground and contact me via our socials on Instagram @_Evolve with Jola, on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube @Evolve with Jola. Also check out our website www.evolvewithjola.com. Bye.